The Secret Code of the Freemasons of Sydney, Episode 4. The Return to the Stars. To bring about a return to the knowledge that was taught in the Temple of King Solomon, a secret symbol was chosen, one that had a deep significant root in nature, a symbol that has been around since the beginning of time. The measurement of time is of the utmost importance if we wish to travel. With the knowledge of time, we can measure speed and distance. The Masons, in order to achieve their goal of returning to the stars, required a symbol that would be both mystical and common to everybody in the world. The symbol that was chosen was the clamshell, because it could be replicated. This was to be achieved by monitoring the movement of the sun over the course of 1 year. Many years ago, I showed how by marking the midday sun, it would draw an image on the ground. This is that image. By taking our starting point as the spring equinox and marking the position of the sun's rays each day for 3 months, up to the longest day, this image would be drawn. We can see that it resembles both the letter G and also the number 6. What is interesting is that for the next 3 months, the sun retraces its steps back to the autumn equinox, and then it continues on its journey in the opposite direction until it reaches the shortest day of the year. It once again draws the letter G or the number 6. To complete the sun's yearly cycle, it retraces its steps back to the spring equinox, where it will start its cycle all over again. From this image, we can see that each spiral drawn at either end could represent the number 6 or the number 9. The marker that was used and which is now placed in the middle was the staff. The staff would then have the number 6 or 9 attached to its end. The numbers 6 and 9 would be associated with the zodiac sign of Cancer, the crab. It would also be associated with the yin and yang symbol that was placed upon the Buddha. These 2 spirals placed at either end could equally be associated with the letter G. This letter G is extremely important to the High Priest, who would have used the staff to record the daily movement of the sun. Because 2 letter Gs have been formed by measuring the movement of the sun, which can also be associated with the circle or letter O, we can then attach these symbols to the Temple of Knowledge. With the symbols GOG, we now have 3 of the letters from the name of the temple that King Solomon had built in Jerusalem. The Israelites used the cycles of the moon to determine their monthly calendar. This gave them 13 months in the year. The moon symbols were associated with the letter S for the serpent, and the letter Y for their triune God, and the letter N, which represented the longest and shortest days of the year, and how the sun moved from one side to the other. The Long Man of Wilmington is carved into the chalk hills of Sussex in England. His task was to mark the cycle of the sun between the longest and shortest days of the year. The letters SYN were then added to the name of King Solomon's temple. We can also add the letter E to the name of the temple, as the letter E represents the three dashes that were joined together to form part of the word Elohim. This shield with the shell and the two keys placed upon it is positioned on the entrance to this building in Rome. By adding all of these symbols together, we arrive at the name of King Solomon's temple, the synagogue. Sin was the Jewish name given to the moon, and Gog was the name given for the sun, because the measuring of the movement of the moon and stars could only be done at night. The priests or teachers who attended at the School of Knowledge would become known as the Knights of the Temple, or the Knights Templars. When they arrived in London, there they built their new temple. They also built their new temple treasury, and also the law courts. And then they called the law courts the Temple Bar. At the Temple Bar, they erected a time clock, and at this time clock they placed two statues, who would both wear the masons' aprons. These two statues were called Gog and Magog. They have become a major tourist attraction in London. As I have said, Gog was the movement of the sun over the course of 1 year, and Ma was the Egyptian word for truth. When we add the letter G and the letter I for the staff to the letters Ma, we get the word Magi. The Magi were the teachers of the builders who aligned the Sphinx in Egypt to orientate its gaze at the star pattern of Orion's belt. The word Orion is associated with On, and along with the letters Ma and S for the serpent, the name given to the builders was to be Masons. The Masons would place the letter G in the centre of their lodge rooms. The letter G could also be interpreted to form the number 6, or when upside down, the number 9. The Great Synagogue on Castlereagh Street in Sydney just happens to be placed at number 166 Castlereagh Street. Directly opposite the Great Synagogue is the Masonic Inn. It is placed on number 169 Castlereagh Street. These numbers, placed upon these two buildings, were not chosen randomly. Everything in Freemasonry is done for a purpose. I am going to finish drawing the movement of the sun over the course of 1 year by stating that each G or 6 takes 3 months to produce. Therefore, by this assumption, 3 6s would be drawn over the period of 9 months, which just happens to be the time span that a baby is in the womb of its mother. The statement that the number 666 is the number of man could then possibly mean that when 3 spirals or 6s were drawn on the ground, then the baby would be born. This would have been very powerful knowledge in the hands of the priest. He could then accurately forecast when a baby was to be born. With this in mind, it's interesting to discover that when Prince William was born, it was upon the summer solstice the 21st of June 1982. The knowledge of these symbols has been known by the Freemasons ever since they were sent away from the Tower of Babylon with 72 different languages. The Freemasons of New South Wales have kept this knowledge alive by giving their Trinity Lodge the number 666, and the Catholic Church have also kept this knowledge alive by having their sacred number as 999. The first Grand Master of the Freemasons, whom they refer to as King Solomon, was really the king who accurately monitored the measurements of the sun and moon. The Latin word for sun is sol, and instead of calling the moon Sin, its name was changed to the moon. We are told in the Bible that the real name of Solomon was Jedi, which means the beloved of God, and that after Jedediah was initiated at the age of 12 in the temple, he was then given the name of Solomon. Hollywood wishes to let us in on this secret with the set of films called Star Wars, where the wisest of the knights were called Jedi.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
And now back to learning the secrets that are associated with the serpent. That serpent that is shown upon the shepherd's crook, and in this case placed close to the altar. This is basically the spiral on the staff. By turning the marker board through an angle of 90 degrees, we can see that the two spirals form the reverse of the letter S. The letter S can be drawn by placing two clamshells together and allowing their two tips to touch. I have coloured in the air flutes on one of the clamshells. This was to highlight that each air flute represents a portion of time in the movement of the sun. This same image of the air flutes of the clamshell is important to the Freemasons, that they have replicated that image into one of their churches. Here they show the outline of the clamshell, with the triangular sides being the longest and shortest days of the year. The centre line is the position of the equinox. Above in the circle are the letters ISH. These three letters ISH are totally connected to the clamshell and also the movement of the sun. Underneath Jesus, who wears his white cloak, is the phrase, "Come unto me." It's as if he literally wants to tell you what's going on. The clamshell, in turn, became the main emblem of the Knights Templars. To emphasise this point, the Trinity of the three clamshells were placed above the main doorway of the Middle Temple Treasury, which is situated in the centre of London. The Trinity of three clamshells were the main emblem of the family shield of Diana, the Princess of Wales. The clamshell has been chosen by Prince William to be his foremost symbol on his family crest. Prince William has chosen to have a red clamshell emblazoned upon his family shield. This was to highlight his royal bloodline. We can see by this painting, placed in Valencia Cathedral, which highlights John the Baptist baptizing Jesus with the clamshell, how important this symbol, the clamshell, was to be to the keepers of this knowledge. As there are no ordinary people in this scene, only rabbis and priests, we can conclude that this knowledge was to be kept to only those people who knew the significance of the clamshell. And the statement recorded in the book of St. Luke, which makes the claim, "There shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars." This verse would highlight that to those people who were not initiated, either through baptism or through initiation into the teachings of the temple, then they would continue to have the blindfold placed around their eyes. The two clamshells, with their triangular tips touching, would appear to almost make the letter S. Which is the symbol placed upon the buckle that ties the masons' aprons together. It can also be seen to be replicated by the two-headed serpent. The letters ISH would become associated with Jesus. The letters ISH are placed upon Jesus by the Freemasons. I would represent the equinox position. H would represent the longest and shortest days. And the letter S would represent the movement of the sun as it travelled from the longest day to the shortest day. The three lines that are drawn downwards from the centre of Jesus show us the outline of the triangular shell. The letters ISH, which are placed upon Jesus, usually have the phrase yesterday, today and tomorrow incorporated within the scene. ISH would be placed everywhere in churches. ISH is placed within the word Christ. The word Christ literally means the messenger. The letters ISH are much older and can be traced back to antiquity. They are placed within the Trinity of ancient Indian deities. These were Vishnu, Krishna and Shiva. This ancient knowledge was taught by the Brahmin priests of India. To show that there is nothing new under the sun, the deity Krishna is shown washing the feet of the Brahmin priests. The priestess Mary is shown washing the feet of Jesus in this scene from Christchurch Cathedral in New Zealand. The knowledge of the letters ISH, which was known by the Brahmin priests, became enshrined within the Bible. It came from the priest who came to be identified as a Brahm, which literally meant he was a Brahmin priest. When a Brahm met the king and high priest of Jerusalem, whose name was Melchizedek, he received from Melchizedek the knowledge associated with the bread of life. From this moment, a Brahm changed his name to Abraham. Abraham's first son would be named after the knowledge he had acquired at the temple in Jerusalem. His son's name would be Ishmael. Ish was the movement of the sun over the course of 1 year. Ma was the Egyptian word for truth. And El represented the Elohim, who taught mankind their ancient wisdom. The letters ISH are incorporated into the word that would reconnect mankind with their Creator. That word is Messiah. These words that are veiled in allegory were taught and known by the priests of the temple. Later, these priests would be known as bishops. They would reside over a parish. The letters ISH and its understanding as the movement of the sun over the course of 1 year was taught as a language. It was the original language of the Jews, who would then become known as Jewish. Their first language would be called Yiddish. Their original temples of knowledge would be placed at Shiloh. Inside this temple at Shiloh, the 12 tribes of the Israelites were each assigned to a star constellation. The zodiac sign of Aquarius the man was given to the tribe of Dan because they were the ancient astrologers. One of the astrologers referred to in the Bible was a man called Daniel. He was from the tribe of Dan, who followed the laws given by the Elohim, or the God of the Israelites, El Elohi. The tribe of Dan lived near the coastal waters and used their knowledge of the universe to chart the oceans. The tribe in Israel, which was called Dan, would leave Israel and inhabit the Scandinavian islands. They would become known as Danish. They would still use the headdress that the high priest wore, which was the horns. This helmet with the horns placed upon it would be worn by the Vikings, and their battle dress would terrify anybody who stood in their way. Their fellow countrymen would become Swedish, Irish, Scottish, English, Spanish, Turkish, and many more too numerous to mention. In the Berlin Museum is the story of Ish. It is known as the Ishtar Gate and is a replica of the entrance gate to the ancient city of Babylon. Merchants and travellers would journey great distances by boat to arrive at Babylon in order to trade and learn at their schools. Everybody would have to pass between the walls of the Ishtar Gate. Her two symbols were the lion and the wise old owl. Upon the Ishtar Gate was inscribed the wisdom of the ancient world in symbols. The wise old owl, the symbol for Ishtar, would become the symbol for the Bohemian Club. That exclusive club where movers and shakers get to be able to liaise with politicians to shape the way the world moves forward. As I have previously said, the Israelites were taken into captivity into Babylon. There they resided for 70 years. The Israelites were granted permission to return to Jerusalem to rebuild a new temple. The leader of this expedition was Zerubbabel, who takes the knowledge of binary code 101 with him upon his cloak. This was one of the two keys of knowledge. The second key would be learnt through the understanding of the language of Yiddish. The letters in the word Yiddish are just symbols. The first symbol in the word is the letter Y. It is the first letter in the Hebrew word for God, Yahweh. The letter Y represents the triune form of God. It is also the symbol for electricity, the second of the two keys, that will aid us in our return to the stars. When I say that the letter Y is the symbol for electricity, I am referring to the term star. All generated electricity is created and formed into two patterns or symbols. These are known as star and delta. Star is this pattern, and delta is this pattern. When electrical energy is created, it is usually done by passing steam or water quickly over a rotating device called a rotor. As the rotor moves through one cycle of 360 degrees, at equal 120 degree points, a cable is attached to the stationary winding. Electrical energy is transferred via a magnetizing effect known as mutual inductance into the winding, and then moves in alternating waves along the cable. Here is a description of how hydroelectrical energy is produced. It is taken from the Sky Podcast YouTube site and was created for the Seattle City Light Company.
Here's how they work. Water is stored behind a dam. To generate power, the water is directed through tunnels called penstalks. The penstalks bring the water to the powerhouse turbines. At the turbine, vanes called wicket gates control the water's energy and direct the water into the turbine runner's blades, causing the turbine to spin a shaft connected to a series of large magnets in the generator. These magnets are spun inside large coils of copper wire, generating electricity. This electricity is transferred from the generator to transformers, which dramatically increase the voltage and allow the electricity to be sent hundreds of miles to Seattle over transmission lines. Gorge Powerhouse on the Skagit River was one of the very first built by Seattle City Light.
This energy, called electricity, is invisible. We can use it to heat an object, or even to cool down an object. We can use it to move an object via a machine. But we can't touch electricity. The Ark of the Covenant was an electrical device, and the high priest was instructed to wear leather gloves whenever he was near it, as leather is not a good conductor of electricity. When electrical energy is created in star, its symbol is shown as follows. This symbol is the Mercedes-Benz car manufacturer's symbol. It is also the ban the bomb symbol. Could we imagine that someone from the past would wish us to see this symbol and one day figure out how to use it? The guildsmen who were taught the craft of working with glass show us this symbol every time we go to a church. It is the prayer symbol. In this scene, 6 angels are making sure Mary gives the star symbol correctly. Mary displays the star symbol within these 2 pillars. she is placed within the royal arch, and upon her head is a crown. This symbol, the star, is usually placed upon the woman, as she was the person who learnt from the serpent. In this scene, the three angels at her feet represent the Trinity. She also wears the crown in the shape of a circle. In this painting from Toledo in Spain, the woman has the symbol for secrets, the veil, placed covering her head. It is white to show her purity and innocence, while she is giving the star sign for electricity. The veil, which is shown underneath her arms, is curved to show the same image that electricity creates. It is known as the sine wave. Electricity is one of the two keys that we were meant to discover. In this scene, Jesus is giving the two keys to his disciples. His eyes are focused on the woman, who is giving the star symbol. In the Masonic Church of St. Bede's in Drummoyne, Sydney, the angel is passing to Jesus the Holy Grail. Jesus has his arms folded in the star sign, the symbol for electricity. What I have discovered on my journey as an electrician is that although all electricity is generated by using the star pattern, its power can be greatly increased by a multiple of 3, just by reconfiguring its pattern. If the electrical circuit is changed from the star position to the delta position, then 3 times the power is available for use. This star delta pattern is how all energy is supplied throughout all national electrical grids. I have shown how the star pattern has been aligned to the offering of prayers and can be seen everywhere. The delta symbol has also been incorporated into our daily lives. Here in Valencia Cathedral, the delta symbol, the triangle, is shown in great detail. The symbol, the delta triangle, has the all-seeing eye placed in its centre on the American $1 note. I seriously believe that the Masons who left Babylon before they could complete their task of building the tower that was to reach to heaven have left us with this code, which has enabled us to take over from where they left off. And they have used symbols such as this one, placed under the woman in the Church of the Shell in Santiago, Spain. As I have just mentioned, electricity is best converted from star to delta, and then back again into star, which basically means that the patterns are intertwined. This symbol under the woman shows the star delta symbol intertwined. As Masons are taught to look up to the heavens for guidance, where better to look for the finest example of this star delta symbol than at the top of a church. Here is that symbol placed on the ceiling of Christchurch Cathedral in Ireland. The interlocking lines form both the star and also the delta symbol. The Latin names of the Trinity are shown within the outside circles, whilst the word Deus, which is the Italian name for God, is placed within the centre. Could this be interpreted that the star delta symbol is the symbol for God? these two symbols, known as star delta, being entwined and being associated with the Trinity, have led me to look at the binary code and the number for God. God's binary code number represents 3 dashes. Imagine these 3 dashes could be reassembled to produce both the star symbol and also the delta symbol. In the Masonic Church of St. Giles in Cheadle, England, is an image of the Holy Grail. It is placed directly above the angel who holds the serpent in her hand. The Mason would truly find the Holy Grail with the serpent inside a mosaic window inside this church. But this is not the Holy Grail we seek. The real Holy Grail is above the serpent. Next to the Holy Grail are the 3 nails that were positioned upon the cross to hold Jesus upon it. These 3 nails are positioned in the form of the star, the symbol for electricity. They are 120 degrees apart. Could the builder of this church really have been placing all the symbols for learning about electricity right in front of our very eyes? Would the 3 arrows that represent the 3 dashes really fill the cornucopia full of the best fruits of the field, as shown in this image? Could we even think that the nails that penetrated Jesus would one day lead us to find that invisible force called electricity? Could we for 1 minute imagine that the position of Jesus being placed upon the cross could come to replicate the star symbol? The image of Jesus being placed upon the cross is shown in nearly every church. In St. Mary's Cathedral in Sydney, the Holy Grail is being filled with the blood of Jesus. Watching Jesus upon the cross are always the women in his life. After his resurrection, Jesus continues to talk to these women. Could the woman who holds the child while sitting in the chair of King Solomon really be the one who is instrumental in bringing to us this knowledge? The white veil placed upon her head while she sits between the 2 pillars associated with the wisdom of Solomon tells us that there is a secret to be learnt in this scene. This woman holds a rod in her hand. The rod is the secret that we must use to create electricity. Jesus, as an infant, is pointing at this rod. The woman is shown with her hands in the prayer position, the symbol for electricity, whilst above her head the dove, the messenger, brings in a white cloud above, which is the triangle, the delta symbol. The symbols for electricity seem to always be associated with the woman. And now to begin to understand why the serpent wished to give to the woman the secret contained within the tree of knowledge. In order to make electricity effective, it needs to be transformed either up or down to a voltage that is agreeable with our appliances or machines. This is where the serpent comes in. For electricity to be produced, wire needs to be coiled around a metallic rod. This enables a magnetic effect to occur. This magnetic effect is used to transform electricity into voltages that are suitable for us to use on our appliances. Usually, two coils are placed side by side. They are shown as the symbol for transforming energy. Here is the woman holding the metallic rod or baton. The serpent is nearly always shown entwined around the rod. The serpent is the symbol for electricity. For hundreds of years, the two serpents have been known as the Caduceus, and they are placed upon Mercury, the god of communication. The Caduceus are placed on the woman outside the College of the Louvre in Paris. The Caduceus, or two serpents around the rod, are placed upon the woman on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. The two serpents around the rod are placed next to the symbol for Isis at the Vatican. As we walk into buildings, on most cases we are unaware of the symbols placed above our heads. Above this archway, on the side of the two pillars, the man holds the two serpents around a rod in his hand, as if to herald in the news. This couple are contemplating the array of symbols portrayed upon this building. Upon closer examination, the two serpents are entwined around the trumpet. If we wish to learn about ancient history and what it wishes to teach us, we should pay a visit to one of the most famous colleges in the world. It is the Louvre, where the film The Da Vinci Code starts. Its newly designed pyramids are placed in front of the Louvre for all to see. But the real message has been placed upon the building by the original masons or builders. It is placed, as always, at the very highest point. Here, two angels are shown with their wings. The one on the right is holding the symbol for secrets, the horns, which are placed upon the bull's head. Above the two angels is an image of what can be described as the sun god. Underneath this image, placed around the rod, are the two serpents, and placed around them are numerous five-pointed stars, which is the Masonic symbol for Venus and the woman. The students who learnt at the Louvre would have been inspired by everything they saw. The Bible tells us that all who look upon the serpent shall live. Here is that image of Moses holding up the metallic rod with the serpent placed upon it in Valencia Cathedral. Valencia Cathedral is where the original Holy Grail is said to be stored. After visiting Valencia Cathedral, I have managed to film the Holy Grail that is stored within this church. The question is, what is to be learnt from holding the Holy Grail? Do we wish to accept that the serpent is the bringer of wisdom? Was the woman chosen to be the ambassador who was to teach us about how to use energy? Is the rod placed in her hands an instrument which can really instruct us how to gain the wisdom to create electricity? Did the rod have to be replaced by the baton and then be placed alongside the orb, the symbol for Venus and the woman, and then placed upon the queen of the realm? We may wonder, did our ancestors ever have the ability to produce electrical energy? And if so, did they leave any evidence for us to find? For clues to this, we must visit the temples in Egypt, and in particular the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. Hathor was the goddess of the celestial world. She is nearly always shown with the horns above her head. With the sun inside, the horns and the sun forming the number 101. In the crypt of the Temple of Hathor is a wall carving showing two Egyptians. They are holding what can only be described as a light bulb. Inside the light bulb is a serpent, which appears to be the internal filament of the light bulb. There is a lead coming out of each light bulb, which is attached to a boulder or square block. There appears to be some sort of antenna device leaning against the light bulb. There are numerous images of this light bulb. Some are singular light bulbs, but all have leads which are attached to a square boulder. There is a carving on the wall which shows an ape at one end of the light bulb. He has two prongs in his hand. We can only wonder what function was carried out by the two prongs. The Egyptians must have trained these apes from a very early age in order for them to obey any orders given to them. Alongside the ape sitting upon the boulder is a woman holding her hands in the air with the circle or symbol for the sun above her head. This image appears to form the symbol 101. Eric von Daniken has taken the time to visit these temples, and as the image shows, he is spreading more light in the understanding of these ancient energy machines. What's amazing is how we have copied the Egyptians in producing light bulbs that look exactly like theirs. This image shows two light bulbs with end caps and a filament in the shape of the serpent. Alongside the light bulbs is the zigzag, the symbol for energy. Above is the all-seeing eye, whilst beneath the eye is a bar with 7 dashes upon it, the number for God. There are many different images from Egypt showing the gods receiving light. Their light bulbs always show the serpent as a filament or light giver. The serpent always appears in a waveform, which leads me to the letters ISH. If we turn the letters upon their side, the letter S appears to follow the movement of the sine waves. The letter I would be its centre line, and the H would be the borders that the wave stays within. So while the serpent can appear to make the same image as the sine wave, this pattern can then be played out in real life, as the serpent is used to bring in the Chinese New Year. The two-headed serpent was always the symbol for the ancient Magi. The Magi were the magicians who could perform magic. In St. Mary's Cathedral is an image of St. Patrick, who holds his staff upon the ground. Underneath the staff are placed two serpents, the symbol for the Magi. This symbol, the Caduceus, or two-headed serpent, is associated with the Egyptian Anubis priests, who were the intermediaries who communicated the knowledge of the gods. An image of the Anubis priest can be found in the Vatican. Due to its size and stature, it must have originated from Egypt. It wears a cloak, whilst holding the two-headed serpent, which is coiled around the rod. This video is moving around due to no tripods being allowed in the Vatican itself. The Anubis jackals are guarding the goddess at the Archbold Fountain in Hyde Park, Sydney. The two symbols of the zodiac, Aries the ram and Capricorn the goat, are displaying their horns, the symbol for secrets, whilst to their side the man is attempting to slay the bull, whilst holding on to his horns. This fountain was built to give an insight into all things Masonic. It stands in front of St. Mary's Cathedral, where the goddess of heaven stands above the horns, which has the serpent with the apple in its mouth entwined around the horns. On the tail of the serpent is the triangle, the symbol for electricity. The 12 star constellations are placed above her head. Before we go on to the final segment in this series of films, we will look at some of the items we have discussed in earlier episodes, only now from a viewpoint of other cultures. The serpent is the main instrument to be shown whenever the Chinese New Year is celebrated. The obelisk, which is engraved with symbols and hieroglyphs, is like a book into our past, and is not just positioned to mark special places on the ground. This obelisk, standing outside the Pantheon in Rome, displays the falcon bird, the symbol for Horus, the Egyptian god, at its top. The Pantheon is one of the oldest remaining temples in the world. Its pillars and triangular roof will still be relaying the message in hundreds of years from now. The obelisk is placed in the hands of the Buddha, whilst the two serpents are highlighted above his head. The two serpents are also shown upon his shoulders. Could we conclude that the Buddha uses the obelisk to mark time? And now back to the first episode where the Buddha wears the swastika, and my claim that the 18 swastikas placed on the floor of Customs House represent the number 6 plus 6 plus 6, and the statement recorded in the Bible that here is wisdom, let him who has an understanding understand the number of man, for it is 666. The Bible indicates that there is knowledge associated with the number 666. I have shown how by adding a 0 or 0 to the 6 and then multiplying those numbers, the dimensions of the pyramid have all come to light and have a bearing on the measurements of the earth. I have included the position of Stonehenge and how its latitude position of 51 degrees, 10 minutes and 42.352 seconds, when multiplied, adds up to 60 times 60 times 6, or 21,600. I have added the statement that the Freemasons of New South Wales have attached the number 666 to their lodge called the Trinity Lodge. And now I will tell you what one of my Masonic colleagues has discovered, that the number 666 has attached to it. It is the S&P stock market trading index. This is the largest index in the world. According to the chart shown here, just before the stock market crash in 1987, the market reached a high of 333, which just happens to be the height of the Washington Masonic Memorial in feet. It also happens to be half of 666. In 1989, the stock market started to rise again until it reached the heights of around 1500. And then in 2008 and 2009, the market started to crash until it reached the month of March 2009. It then reached a significant position of 666, which was chosen as its holding point. From this position of 666, it has steadily increased by increments of 666 until it reached the 25th of August 2014. We can see by this S&P daily bar chart, which has been specifically designed into orange squares that are equally divided into 666 days portions and 666 points portioned, and that the value of 3 times 666, which is 1998, and was reached on the 25th of August 2014. Exactly 1998 days after it reached the low of 666 in March 2009. The number 666, which is used in the stock market, is not a coincidence. On the same night of August the 25th, 2014, the British pound moved in increments of 666. This number, 666, is incorporated into the Washington Monument, being 6,660 inches in height. Could any of this be achieved without the understanding of symbols? Was the amount of gold sent to King Solomon each year, 666 talents, meant to spur our inquisitive nature? Bruce Cathy relates that the number 6 is a harmonic number.
In this harmonic mass, you can shift it up and down the harmonic scale by multiplying or dividing by 6. This is all from the circular measure, which is 666.
Does this number, being divided by the 12 tribes of Israel, and then coming to 55.5, really hold the key to the binary code? And if so, does Hollywood wish us to see this code? The film The Matrix opens with this scene of binary code numbers revolving on the screen until it freezes on the number 555 and the binary code 101. All of this is not just a coincidence. Does the 3 5s placed upon the tracing board really hold the key to discovering the Freemasons' code? During the first episode, I stated that I will try to explain the reasons there are 3 dice upon the Freemasons' cloak, with the numbers 3, 4 and 5. To answer this statement, I am going to let Bruce Cathy explain his theory on the 3, 4, 5 triangle and how he has used the Pythagoras triangle to work out his harmonic numbers. Here is Bruce Cathy in his younger days.
The fact I was getting answers, but I couldn't prove it. And then I read a book by John Mitchell called The View Over Atlantis, I think it was. And he had a piece in his book that he was talking about something else. It gave him the exact clue I wanted, and it was based on Pythagoras. Now, most of you would have heard of the theorem of Pythagoras, the square and the hypotenuse is sum of the squares on the other 2 sides. It's a 3, 4, 5 triangle. And in the work I was doing, and the values for the speed of light, the maximum value was 144,000 minutes of arc per second. And I found out again, this is another part of the research, that I could ignore noughts and work harmonically. You could cross those off. And if the noughts this side, you cross those off. You just use the block number itself. This has been proved and is now accepted. But if you take a halfway, 72, harmonic, and multiply each one of these sides by 72 in proportion, you get 316, 288, and 216. Well, there are 360 degrees in a circle, there are 21,600 minutes in a circle, and 288 is 2c, or twice the speed of light, in harmonics. So I had the proof I wanted. The circle is not an arbitrary figure, it's been cut up to Pythagoras. And the basis is 360, 21,600 and 288, which is 1,244 2c.
We can see how passionate about his work Bruce Cathy was. And when he makes the statement later in life that the world will soon be able to use free energy, I was somewhat sceptical.
I can see what the future's going to be. I can see what sort of a world we can have. And that world will be completely free for energy. You can tap energy directly out of the atmosphere from the gravitational field. And I found in my work that gravity is not a force, and they're trying to find a gravity wave. And gravity, from what I can see from my equations and things, is relative motion in space.
I now think we are getting closer to that reality of free energy. This is because I recently learnt that Elon Musk, the CEO of the Tesla Group, has decided to make freely available to anyone the patents for all of Nikola Tesla's fantastic ideas on free energy. With the Tesla Group deeply involved with space travel and free energy, and the Freemasons' knowledge that Cape Canaveral is located on a series of energy lines, that original project of returning to the stars after the destruction of the Tower of Babylon has now become a reality. The Freemasons have made all of this come to fruition. If you wish to know more, join a Freemasons lodge close to you.